Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. In today's video, we're gonna make a new screen. It's called MapPickerScreen, and it's gonna determine the user device location, and we will allow the user to move and zoom in and out and pick location. And after that, return the latitude and the longitude of the user location. Okay, in the last video, we reached this result where we have elevated button in the center of the screen. So now we're gonna grab this elevated button in column, and then we're gonna duplicate the elevated button under the first one. And this one, we're gonna write Open Map Picker instead of Open Map. And to make these buttons on the center of the screen, we're gonna make a main axis alignment of the column to main axis alignment dot center. And instead of navigate us to Open Map, we're gonna make a new file inside Lessons folder, and we're gonna name it MapPickerScreen. So this way, MapPickerScreen.dart, and then we're gonna make a stateful widget, and this stateful widget is called MapPickerScreen. And in the return, we're gonna add scaffold, and then inside the scaffold, we're gonna add the app bar. It's the default app bar. And we will backtick to the main.dart, and instead of navigate us to Open Map, we're gonna navigate to MapPickerScreen. Now, once we head to Open MapPickerScreen, it's gonna show us a white screen, and it's empty screen. So like the previous lesson, we have to add the Google Map widget, but this time we're gonna change the camera position. In the previous lesson, we give the default location of camera position, and it was Google location. But this time we're gonna make the code or the app detect or determine the user location. So we're gonna define a camera position, and it's gonna be nullable. We're gonna name it a user location in this way. And then this user location should be used inside the Google Map widget. So inside the scaffold, we're gonna add the body key and then Google Map widget. And in the initial camera position, we're gonna add the user location and add the null check after the variable name to double check it's not null. But in this way, we have to handle if the user location is still null. So we're gonna make small if condition, and it's gonna show if the user location equal null, it's gonna return center, and inside the center, it's gonna return circular progress indicator, else it's gonna show the Google Map. So as we can see here, it's showing the indicator while the user location is null. So now we're gonna make a new function, and it's called getUserLocation, and its type is void, so it's not gonna return anything. And inside the curly brackets, we're gonna add the logic of determine the user location. And now it's time to know about Geolocator Flutter package. And this package is available on the official website pub.dev. So this package here, as you can see, if you read the documentation, it allows us to determine the user location using the hardware parts of the phone. But we have to add the Android and iOS setup or configuration to allow the app to determine the location. So the first step, we're gonna take the dependency key here, and we're gonna to the pubspec.yaml, and we will add the key here, and don't forget to get the packages. And then we will go to the documentation here, and once we scroll down, we will expand the Android setup. So firstly, we have to be sure these two options are enabled inside the Gradle.properties. So we will go to Android, Gradle.properties. We will check if these keys are enabled or not. And in the latest Flutter version, it's already enabled. So we will go to the second step. And in the second step, we have to make sure that the compile SDK version is minimum 35. Inside the Android folder, app build.gradle, Android app build.gradle. So once we go to our project, Android app build.gradle. So here we have to add the configuration if it's missing. And the latest version, it's called Min SDK. So if you don't use the latest version of Flutter and Android, you have to change this to 35 version. But in our case, we using the latest version. Okay, now it's the time to use the permissions. And there's several of types of permissions. So for example, the first two permissions allow us to use the location, and the second one allow the app to use the user location in the background. For example, driver tracking or order tracking. And here for the foreground service location, it allow us to use the location in the foreground. For example, floating location widget outside of the app. So in our case, we just will use these two permissions. So we're gonna copy them, and then we are heading to Android. And after the Android app, source, main, Android manifest.xml. And before the manifest and tag, we're gonna paste the permissions here. Now we finished the Android setup. Let's move to the iOS setup. And for the iOS, it tells us we have to add this key and this string inside the info plist file. And the info plist file, it's inside the iOS folder, inside the runner. So we're gonna copy the configuration and go to the iOS folder, runner folder, info plist. Once we scroll down, we're gonna see several keys. We're gonna add our key here. And here we have to add the message for the user to explain why the app need the access to use the location. So once you're gonna publish the app for both Android and iOS, you have to explain everything to the user. And here, if we want to use in the background or always in use, we have to add this configuration. But it's gonna enough to stop here for our case. So now we finished the configuration for both Android and iOS, and we have to back to our code and continue building our getUserLocation function. So before we determine the user location, we have to do a few steps. And the first step, for example, is we want to be sure that the location service is enabled. For example, in this way, the location service is enabled. And while this service is not enabled, we can't determine the user location. So the first step is we have to double check if the location service is enabled to continue and determine the user location. We will define Boolean value. We will call it is service enabled. This is going to equal to await geolocator dot is location service enabled. And this line or function, it's return future Boolean, and it will tell us if the service location is enabled or not. So we're gonna print service enabled, then we're gonna pass our attribute here to check and see if it's enabled or not. In our case, we have to double check each time the user visit this screen to check the service if it's enabled or not. So we're gonna add inside the initial state function here, we're gonna call our function getUserLocation. To be sure, each time the user visits this screen, we will go through the steps step by step. So once we visit this screen, it's gonna print service enabled if it's true or false. In our case, it's print here service enabled the true. So we have to go to the next step. The next step is we want to break the function if the service not enabled. And we know the return like this way, it's gonna break the function and don't continue to the next step. So we're gonna add here if condition is service enabled equal false, we're gonna return and break the function. But instead of return and break the function only, we're gonna add this line geolocator dot open location settings. So in case if the location service is not enabled, we will open the settings to allow the user to turn on the settings. So let's check this code. We're gonna turn off the service from here. And then we're gonna visit the screen again. And in this case, the app open the location settings. So we can turn off and turn on the location service from here. So we can go back to our app and hit back button and then visit the Open Map Picker again. While the app didn't open the settings screen, that means it didn't break by return line here. So we can moving forward to the next step. And the next step, there are several steps. First of all, we have to be sure that the user allowed the app to use the location. So how we can check that? We can define location permission here. We're gonna name it permission, for example. And this attribute is equal to Geolocator.check permission, and we're gonna make it await because it's a future returning the location permission as a data type. So now we want to check if the permission is not denied. So we want to make a if condition, and we will pass the permission that we defined before, and we're gonna check if the permission equal location permission dot denied, and this means the user denied the permission before. And simply if the permission is denied, we're gonna write geolocator dot request permission, and this will pop up the dialog for the user and request the permission again. And now we can go to the next step. And the next step, we're gonna double check if the user after requesting the permission is denied the permission again. We're gonna make if condition permission equal location permission denied, or permission equal location permission dot denied forever. And in this case, we want to break the function again with an empty return. So if the user denied, we will break the function with empty return, if denied or denied forever. So our function is checking step by step. First of all, it's gonna check if the location is enabled, and then we will check the permission, and we will request the permission if denied, and then if denied or denied forever, it's gonna break the function and go out. So if it's not denied and not denied forever, we can go to the next step. After double checking if the service is enabled and the permission are not denied, and we didn't visit the two returns in our code, the first one and the second one, now we can go simply and add the last step. And the last step is determine the user location and return the value. So simply we're gonna define final position is equal to await geolocator dot get current position. And this function returning data type called position, not camera position like we defined it before. So this position, it is the same idea of the camera position, but in different type. So simply after determine or get the current position of the user, we're gonna just simply equaling user location with the position. So we're gonna make the user location equal camera position, and inside the target, and the target is data type called Lat Long. So we're gonna define Lat Long data type, and inside it we can pass latitude and longitude of the user location. And here we will use position dot latitude, and the second attribute position dot longitude. And don't forget to put all this inside setState function to make these changes reflect on the UI. And now it's supposed to working perfectly. If we go back and then we hit to the map picker again, we will see the dialog of requesting the permission. And if we grant the permission and go back to the picker screen again, it should determine the user location exactly. But I think here I forgot to add some zoom. So while I passing the new camera position, I have to add key called zoom, and we will add 15, for example, and we will back to the screen again. And here we go. The app now determine my location. And by the way, we have to use a real device, not emulator, if we want it to work perfectly. But now I can't see my exact location on the map. So if we put the mouse on top of Google Map widget, we can see the keys and the attributes that I can pass to this widget. So one of them is called my location enabled, and it's Boolean. So once we pass true to this value, it's gonna show a blue point on the screen and allow us to know the exact location on the map. Okay, now we want to allow the user to move the camera, zoom in, zoom out, and pick another location instead of the device location. So we're gonna wrap this Google Map widget inside a stack. We're gonna wrap it with column and replace the column with a stack. And inside this stack, we're gonna add positioned widget. And this positioned widget, we will add the edges of it. For example, for top, we're gonna give 0. For bottom, we're gonna give 0. For left, we're gonna give 0. And for right, give 0. And inside the child, we're gonna give center widget. And inside the center, we're gonna give icon. And then icons.location.pin to make it visible on the screen. If we just hit save, we will see the icon that's on top of the map. So let's make it bigger a little bit. So we're gonna make it 32 in size. And for the color, we're gonna make it colors.blue. And in this way, we have pin on the screen in the blue color. So now let's make a fast recap. The last location of the user location is the real device or physical location of the mobile of the user. But the location of the pin, once the user moving the camera right or left, it didn't determine yet. So now inside the Google Map widget, we have an attribute or key is called onCamerMove. And this onCamerMove, once the user moving the camera, we have camera position here we can access through this function. So we're gonna make a set state function, and we're gonna make user location, that the first one on the top of the screen, it's equaling the new position that determined from the CamerMove function. And after that, we want to print the value here to double check that the user location updated once the user moved the camera. So inside the print, we have the user location, and because it's nullable, we have to add null check. And now we have to cast it in using function the toString, because the latitude is double, is not string. And we have to add the plus between the message and the value. And we want to duplicate this, and we will make it for longitude and then change to the longitude, and we will put it inside the key debug mode because we don't want to use it in the release mode. After adding these lines, it's supposed the app, each time the user moving the camera of the map, it's supposed to print the user lat and the user long. So we will go back and we will back to the screen again. And now each time the user moving the camera left or right, you can see that the debug console printing the user lat and user long and equaling user location with the new location after moving the camera. So now we want to allow the user to press a button, and after pressing that button, execute specific function. We can add floating action button, we can add the regular one, but I prefer to add elevated button instead of a floating action button. So we will add elevated button, we will make an empty function here, and then we will add text and we will name it pick location, for example. And then we will add the floating action button location, floating action button location center float, see it in this way. And once the user pressed this button, we want to show dialog. And this dialog, it should contain or returning dialog widget, have a child with text widget, and that text widget showing the lat and then user location dot target dot latitude. And because it's null, we don't forget to add null check. And then we want to duplicate this, so we're gonna wrap it with column and then duplicate the text widget, but this time for the longitude. So we're gonna change the text for long and then longitude. And now we have to show, as we can see here, We want to make the column take the minimum size, so we're gonna make main axis size dot min. But when we add the dialog this way without make it in separate widget, we have to pop or close the dialog and reopen it again. And now, as we can see, it's taking the minimum size. We can add some padding to make it readable. And then we will press pick location again. And now, this way, we can use the location. Instead of showing it in dialog, we can print it, we can send it to API, we can save it to Firebase, or even save it locally. And thank you for watching, and Assalamu alaikum.